Thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a really wonderful guest here. Oh, by the way, this is my show, Thread to Threshold. My name is Phil Rice, and yeah, I've got a really cool guest today. I've been waiting so long to have a chat with this gentleman and share him with my immediate audience, and hopefully this will spread out further. He's a wonderful man, wonderful author, very caring person, and I've got a huge amount of respect for this man. He's shared so much of his knowledge through his books. I've got a big stack of his books personally, and I really hope you enjoy this conversation we're going to have today. He just brings such a wealth of knowledge and information and experience from so many different areas of life, and he's a real treasure. And I'm so pleased and so honored to bring Dr. Richard Alan Miller onto the show. This is my third podcast, and so now that I've had a couple of a bit of warming up, I've reached out to Rick, and he was happy to do an interview. So I'm going to bring him on, and Rick's I'm just going to let him go, and then we'll sort of we'll jump in when things when it's time to bring in some other things. So anyway, I'm just going to press the button, and there's Rick. Hey, Rick.
There you go. It's been a challenge for all of us. My bridge broke, so if I look like I'm a hillbilly, I haven't. It's gone. It's history. My computer is acting weird, so we may not get finished with this interview. Stay tuned. Film at 11. I always wanted to open live from New York. It's Saturday Night Live. Well, that was always my dream would be to open Saturday Night Live before I settle into becoming worm food.
Well, you never know your luck. They might be calling people up if they can't get into the studio.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. One never knows. Where would you like to start? What do you want to know?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just confirm something, and that is I checked your website, but your website is it still richardalanmiller.com with one L?
Yes. And it just got updated, so enjoy.
Okay, because I definitely want to put that.
And it's ALAN.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, I've got that. Oh wow, you've changed it. That looks awesome.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, because I tried it yesterday and it wasn't working. I must have done it wrong. So what I'll do is that I'll add something down the bottom so people can join in. Excuse me, everybody. I'm still getting my head around the technology side of this. So there we go. Down the bottom there is Richard's website. And so, Rick, let's start off by give us a little bit of background about yourself, because you've had a very interesting life and continue to do so. So please, by all means, just go for it.
I was a child prodigy. In my junior and senior year in high school, old man DuPont took an immediate interest in me because of what I did for science fair projects. Junior year, I did the mathematics for the NASA's Fortran 4 with those black women that were working at NASA. I was a whiz kid with code. And then in my senior year, I had developed a new meson field theory, which later turned out to be the muon. And Yukawa got a Nobel Prize for it, but I co-authored that paper as a high school kid. And then I built this linear accelerator in my senior year that created particles going faster than the speed of light. And I was the first American to do that. They called it, back then it was called Cherenkov radiation. Today it's called Bremsstrahlung. And they used those two science fair projects on the Mariner 4 4 years later to measure the water on Mars. And so it was obvious that old man DuPont was at my high school graduation. And then when I graduated from Washington State University, he was there to take me back east and begin what I now am part of as Navy intelligence. I was lead physicist at the Pentagon for 6 of 11 years during the Nixon era. I did the early X-Files for Fox. I'm that guy. They call me the real Fox Mulder. I did all the paranormal study for the military. Whenever they couldn't figure something out, they'd bring in A-Team. We never figured it out either. We caught a lot of flies, and disbelief. You know, I've seen things. I have no idea what they mean. And, but I have theories, and as such, gives us a platform from where to start trying to understand what's going on in the other worlds of reality. I have come to the conclusion that this is a dream state. There are Aborigines that would say that there are dream states that have more content to reality than consciousness. So who's to know, you know? Well, you know, I've done a lot of things. I've put a lot of different lifetimes in, and have been to places. I've been inside the Arctic Circle. I've been down in Antarctica where I saw the Nazi base. I've been to Mars. Just kidding. But I wrote a screenplay for Fox that they've accepted called The Domes of Mars. We have a 3D printer now that will print a 30-foot geodesic dome in a special form of concrete with magnesium in it, ready for Mars. So I've written a screenplay for that, because that's how something becomes real. Once you see it in your mind's eye, that's what makes it real. It's not physics. It's not, you know, doing it. It's once you see it in your mind's eye, that is literally what makes something real. That's why Hollywood has such an influence on everything. Yeah. Where do you want to go?
Oh man, where could we go, right? I mean, I'm just looking at this. I'm just looking at this book here. So I just want to share something, folks. That this book here, Rick's got a crap load of books that you can download, and you want to buy them direct from his website too. You'll get it signed, and you know, that's how I reckon to get it. But you know, this book here has been an extremely important book in my sort of like exploration of consciousness and also life in general. And that you know, I've read it probably 3 times cover to cover. And I still have to go back and still trying to figure things out, because there's so much information.
Those are the 8 basic protocols I developed to create SEAL Team 1. I did that when I was working out of anesthesiology. My martial arts came when I grew up in the Philippines, and as a boy in 1948. I was 4 years old, and I learned how to fight on the streets of the Philippines because I was Caucasian. Mom was Indochina theater, and so they stuck me in Buddhist missionary schools. I was raised Northern Shaolin.
So yeah, you've done, you know, so Tai Chi has been part of your practice, your yoga essentially as well, isn't it? You know, moving meditations and things, and
yeah.
You know, you've talked a lot about you know, I remember you mentioning that movie, what is it? Meetings with Remarkable Men, and we've talked about the whirling dervish. And that, and yeah. And I sent you I sent about a year or two ago. I sent you a paper, a scientific article from a mainstream article showing that scientists had gone in to study whirling dervish because they were spinning in opposition to the Earth's Coriolis direction.
That's correct. That's restructuring water in their body. That's Jerry Pollack's works out of the University of Washington. I actually worked with Jerry in 1970. He was my lead when I was working Navy SEALs and other kinds of things. I was on 4th floor at the University of Washington in the School of Medicine, where all the boys from Brazil were. That was where the top secret work was all being done. And I had, back then, I had top secret clearance with vault permits. I had, you know, I actually ran several vaults.
So you've been, you know, you've had access.
Huh?
Hey? You've had access. You've had access to some pretty interesting sort of information. Right?
They never give you full disclosure on anything, of course. I mean, you know, plausible deniability, whatever they call that now. But I've seen things that I don't know what they mean. Have I met aliens? My concept to you would be, how could they not be real? If you can imagine them in your mind's eye, that's, you know, even only halfway to God.
Yeah. You know, and, you know, I do recall, you know, you do share an experience that you struggle to recall. I mean, if you'd like to share that with the viewers.
I've been to Broom Lake. I've been to level 8 at Broom Lake. I have met an entity called Krill. I have no idea what it means. That black goo. We have black mold in our forests. It's extremely toxic. It thrives in radiation, like at Chernobyl and at Fukushima. Who knows? Maybe we're being terraformed. You could imagine. It's probably true, and even more than that. So if you think it's good, bad, or ugly, well, the correct answer is yes.
Yeah. This is the thing is that, like that Fukushima thing, that's kind of, nobody's talking about that anymore. It's not like it's going away.
Here's the bad news we have. We have 21 Daiichi-like reactors on the New Madrid fault line in the center of the United States, and they're all leaking. And the bad news is it takes one full year to power one of those down. What would happen if the grid collapsed? Well, nobody is addressing that. Nobody is talking about anything like that. And that's one of the reasons why all the reactors are being turned off on the West Coast. But the New Madrid fault line, there's a map that the military uses on future maps of the world. And the one the military uses is who is it? Not Scallion, Chet Snow. They use Chet Snow. Google that up, and you'll see the United States cut in two. And the New Madrid fault line is gone. What would happen to all those reactors that are leaking? That's just the U.S. Take a look at what the rest of the world looks like and see what is being predicted as worst case scenario. Now, that's just grid down stuff. There's Hawaii. The Big Island is active. They're seeing Yellowstone underground as far as Ohio in the United States now with lava, underground lava from Yellowstone. So we are going to have an event. When and how bad it is, I have no clue. They're saying here in America, it'll be an 8.4 off of Crescent City. There's a volcano that's out in the ocean out there that is active. And when it goes, the entire shelf is going to drop all the way down to Peru. So, and that's going to globally change everything.
Now, just for the viewers out there, now, you've just to give them some sort of context and background to your qualifications, if we want to call it that. Now, you've got 2 doctorates, haven't you, in physics and biophysics? You got 4. Could you just wrap on that, just to add the context?
Well, 2 of them are in physics, of course. I'm resonant cavity oscillators is my primary. I have a Harvard Medical, so I'm an anesthesiologist, and I'm also a Jungian psychotherapist. I studied with James Hillman. So I try to have a balance of. It doesn't work that way, of course. You gotta laugh your way through it. When I came out of grad school, I got assaulted by lodges, just like in the movies, the Skull and Bones. I taught at Harvard for 11 years and metaphysics. And that's my big goal today is I have a new university I'm opening in 2 weeks called Albert Schweitzer University. And it's an online university that I'm turning into a Harry Potter-like school for metaphysics for children.
Yeah, cool.
Children, in my humble opinion, are our single most important natural resource. And we're ruining it with the educational systems that are current. And then with this virus closing down schools early, we're losing something that is extremely important. The reason that children are more intelligent, they're way more intelligent. What happens is, as we become adults, we become more experienced. But experience also limits what you can do, because you can't do that. A child doesn't know that. That's where the child is able to go beyond an adult. And you might say, well, yeah, but the child doesn't know it can't do that. It doesn't work that way. What basically happens is that the laws of physics change with altered states of consciousness. And so going into different states, you make up your own rules. That's why mapping different states of consciousness is so important, to know where one starts and the other ends. I can, with hypnosis, improve my ability in guessing by 400 times over where it is right now. And that was the first protocol I trained SEALs in, how to think with the gut. Intuition, when you come from an intuitive place, you don't by definition make mistakes. The brain, this brain that we associate with the mind, is there to balance things, religion and science, like a cavitation process, death and life. You've got the soul and Nibiru, you've got the black hole and the white hole. It balances things, but it also limits what you can and can't do, and that's what it's there for, to keep you in your state of humanness.
So I've got to ask this, because what do you think about, like, imagine if we started teaching kids these, like, some of these ESP type protocols when they were younger, before they get told that they can't do it. Do you think we'd have a revolution, like we'd have an evolution of the human species?
Well, that's Cloud Atlas, the movie Cloud Atlas, and where we're trying to go. But ESP is, everybody's got it, and we just ignore it. Some are intuitive. My girlfriend is an empath. She can touch my body and know where I'm hurting physically. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can say that the body, there's a lot of neurolinguistic programming going on, body movements and so on, that's part of communication, like my hand gestures and stuff like that. But there, at some level, we're connected, like you are me and I am you and I am the walrus. That's called the archetypal plane of consciousness. And man is not the lead of the universe in that sense of it. Dolphin are blowing these little sonar bubbles and playing with them as an art form, and it's a form of cold fusion. And orca, that chases them for food, has a cerebral cortex that's literally twice the size of man, and that mammal's firing 60% of it. It's well better designed for its environment than humans are. Has a larger range of environment that man doesn't have. And actually, there are 4 cetacean on this planet, whale type things, a manatee and the pilot whale. They're all 4 of them have bigger brain cases. And I've watched an elephant in Indonesia paint itself with a paintbrush and show more awareness of self-image than a human does. Now, what would that imply? Is that intelligence and awareness has many different faces. That's why there's many different kinds of intelligence. I have one kind because of all my degrees and study and being gifted, but women, EQ is a higher form of IQ, in that EQ is how you feel about the physical plane. In other words, it's more information about the physical plane than IQ. And so you have to take things in stride and realize we're limited by our assumed truths and definitions. That's the first thing physics does before it does anything else. It makes assumed truths and definitions, and that's what limits door number 3.
And so we could even segue from this, and folks, I understand that this is just going to be wherever it goes, but on the topic of imagination and the importance of imagination, because this is one of our greatest gifts, maybe even one of if not the greatest gift, our ability to
be able to see something in the mind's eye. That's correct. It is imagination is reality. And so with that said, this is an extremely important statement. Man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. Yeah, let that one sink in. When you start to think something's going on, what happens? There it is. Because you're making it happen with your mind's eye. And so that's why all your saints in history have stressed the importance of meditation, training the mind.
It's about being, like you talk about, being master and commander of your ship. I mean, this is talking about your internal ship, like your actual vehicle, you know, for the experiences, right? You got to start somewhere. And
you have a choice of coming from a place of wounding or coming from a place of purpose. Now, you're here for a reason. I have no idea why I'm here yet. That's part of my discovery. If I were to come from a place of wounding, I can write an AI program, an algorithm, to be able to accurately predict what I'm going to do based on coming from a place of wounding. However, if I come from a place of purpose, I'm transparent. I'm not in conflict with anything. Now, you don't ever really get there. Like Simon says, you can go only halfway to the door. That protocol will never take you to the door, and yet you presume you focus on the door as your goal, and yet you miss the journey. The idea, this is all in metaphor, that trying to suggest that we focus on the wrong things, and something is half empty rather than half full. With all of this coronavirus right now, one good thing that could come out of all of this is we start producing our own food locally. Right now, well, then there is an example of how this could be turned, and everything happens for a reason. Everything leads to something better. So that's what I'm going to do. The first lesson I'm going to teach a child is how to put an aquaculture system together in their own home. They can go from 3% production of food to 40.
Wow.
That's a metaphor for how you take a situation and play it as leading to something better. We needed to get to a place where we stopped shopping and we started growing our own food again.
I agree.
Well, then there's a good excuse to start doing that. We've got too social. Like, imagine living in New York City and taking the subway to work. That no longer is going to work, is it?
This whole thing is like, there's so much change going on, but I've been talking to people and saying, look, one of the biggest things that's going to come out of this is that it's going to change your relationship to food, because your relationship to consumerism is completely changed. You can't just, it's not the same as what it was. So,
so-called just-in-time delivery, the concepts of non-storable commodities over storable commodities, and the idea of agribusiness as opposed to producing your own food, being a little more independent. Sovereign is a good word. My father used to say there were three ways of being in this world. There's the vulgar, the adept, and the exempt. And the vulgar get audited, the adept gets money back from the government, and the exempt has a 501c3. They don't pay taxes. You always aspire for grade 7 or adeptus exemptus is what they would call it in the lodge, where you're adept in being exempt. You can have access without having to participate. Metaphor. And if you get half of what I'm saying, that's what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of content in what I'm trying to say here. And each time you're going to hear something just slightly different that's important as part of the content. That's what I do. I speak in metaphor a lot.
I've listened to quite a few of your interviews, and but I also know for myself that I have to hear something quite a few times before it really sinks in, and and I think that. But let's just, while we're talking about sustainability, I mean, what workbook 2 is all about, can you live off the grid for 30 days? And this is the work you did with Matt Stein. And I think that's some of the most crucial work for people to consider right now, because if we're all going to be waiting around for somebody to come and deliver something to us, we might be bitterly disappointed.
Living off the grid for 30 days is a good exercise. If you can this summer, winter, I guess it's winter where you are, your goal should be at the end of the year, you're now eating more than 40% of the food you produce yourself. If you can do that goal, you will be a survivor. Matt Stein, untimely death. We always thought he was going to be the last man standing. And yeah, it just surprised all of us. I'm 76. Matt was very young. He's younger. I'm just a grumpy old man now. But I have a TARDIS. A get out of jail card. Time is not real any more than space. It's a construct in the way we organize information. That's why the flat earthers can say, is the earth flat or round? And the correct answer is yes, they're both predicated on assumed truths. One is like, that's where physics does not have the answers. Like shortest distance between 2 points. Space is curved. You can easily prove that the earth is flat using tensor math. Now, is it flat or round? Well, because space is a construct, it's actually either one predicated on what assumed truths you choose to adore. If you choose to look at it this way, Earth's flat. And you only have certain realities that can happen. If you choose to see that the Earth's round, now you have these doors and you can go there. And it's your choice. That's what made us God's favorite, was we had choice. And we have that diversity. And constructs like space and time, that's why we've gone from a quantum universe into a holographic one. Quantum universe measures everything in space and time, which is limiting the doors that you have access to. For example, because of an uncertainty principle, going from an analog to digital program, what you've done essentially is gotten to a place where the more you know about one thing, the less you know about something else. You can't get there from here. So we chose to create a new universe based on information and resolution of information, like a fractal. And that has its own limitations. For example, information isn't exactly what you think it is. For example, there's a theorem that states if you have enough information to ask a coherent question, you have enough information to answer it. The way you frame the question is where the answer lies. That's information. And so, again, it's limiting. Your face is fragmented into a bunch of faces, it looks like. Yeah. Kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh look. Hey. I've got friends who we talk about these sorts of topics, and the computer hardware, software interconnecting seems to break down, and people's websites are getting shut down and shit. So we're just trying to do the best we can with what we got. So hopefully listeners and viewers, if we cut out, please forgive us. But we're at the behest of the technology and the big tech companies who I know are tuned into us. Because
You know that, well, okay, go ahead. I won't interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But, the censorship is pretty rife right now. And, so just be aware that, you may notice that some things that you post that you might think are even a little bit edgy, you might get slapped on the wrist about it. And you'd be like, what? Why? That wasn't that bad.
I can't resist this. You've used the word hope several times. And I have to remind you that hope was the last evil in Pandora's box.
Yeah, I don't like using it, but it slips out
it's
sometimes.
Not about hope, it's about active participation. And that's why they have that little thing in the bathroom that says unrewarded genius over persistence.
Yeah. The hopium. Don't smoke too much opium.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. I actually use great scarlet poppy for codeine, one molecule different.
Oh, interesting.
You
grow a lot. You have your own medicine cabinet in the form of a herb garden, don't you?
Yeah, herbal pharmacies. That is probably the first thing that needs to go in your garden. If you're on a prescriptive drug, you can presume most of it came from China, and that's not going to happen shortly.
Yeah, it's changing.
What are you going to do about your heart medicine and blood thinner? You know, rat poison aside, warfarin, I use cloitinase, by the way. I'm an enzyme for a blood thinner. So you get that out of a pharmaceutical mushroom. Cloitinase is an enzyme that you find near with polysaccharides and the beta glucans in a pharmaceutical mushroom. Yes, I have an herbal pharmacy. Very important to have that as part of your garden.
And I think also because, you know, we're obviously in different geographical locations and climates and so on and so forth, you know, becoming aware of, you know, what's growing in your backyard, a garden, you know, learning about these things means that, you know, you might discover you have access to far more than what you were previously aware of. And, you know, you've written a stack of books on these topics, Doc, haven't you? You know,
that's what USDA, you know, they used to call a weed is just simply a plant out of place. A weed is cataloged as something a cow won't eat. Now, that's what calls it a weed, is because it's not edible by cattle and foraging. That's our 19th century thinking on how important what is, like beef as over the native plants that are growing. A native plant will tell you more about your soil than any soil testing that you could possibly do. Just the way the weed would grow and propagate will tell you what kind of bee or sea horizons that you have going on your soil crops. I'm your MacGyver, by the way, for the military. I've written a 9-volume encyclopedia on alternative agriculture. So, you know, alternative ag is our future. And it was Gurdjieff that said you should eat your environment. In other words, if you live on the coast, you eat fish. You live in the Midlands, you would eat probably grains. And has to do with habitat and cultivars. You're a specific cultivar. You become native. Your enzymes and bacteria and the gut are uniquely different. That's one of the reasons medicine's broken. One size does not fit all. We're all different and unique. That's what's wrong with medicine. Because what's healthy for one person is not for another. What's the right thing? And medicine would say, well, you got to be in this category here. And they've limited individuals that function differently.
Yeah, it's like they're being corralled, you know, to, you know.
Well, it makes it easier for medicine, you know, following the yellow brick road down into the beef slaughterhouse.
Yeah. Hey, and just on that, you know, just on that, you know, like moving your location, you know, changes your relationship to the food and your environment. And that because, you know, I've lived in a different part of New Zealand, and I noticed that straight away. My whole, you know, I used to get wicked allergies, and I moved to a place that had wicked pollen, but it wasn't the pollen that was making me sick. It was actually the humidity up here, I found out. Actually, it wasn't an allergy. In fact,
what makes allergies happen is histamine release, like snake bite. If you can reprogram your body on the release of histamines, you don't have allergies. That was a thing I did for Navy SEALs. It's just your body's overreaction to an allergen. Everybody's allergic to everything. And what you do is set your body so it can cope in a given area. And if you move, you haven't readjusted those levels. And then, of course, you have problems.
So when I shifted back, I stopped getting allergies, which was funny because I'd get sick all the time up here, but I shifted away to a place that had a higher pollen count. I moved back up here, and I'm fine. But, you know, you talked about something in another talk about, you know, like the lunar cycle of the female. When you change the location, that their cycles can change and things. And I find that curious.
Yeah, when Ostrander and Schroeder did their psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain, basically they used me to do all the paranormal studies. We knew about aliens back then, but we were more worried at that time with what Russia was doing. And actually, in fact, Russia back then were superstitious. They did not have the high level of technology that they do today. That's where the Sputnik and the space race started. And it was all luck. Basically, it was Czechoslovakia that had some high-tech stuff. And they had gone from astrology to astronomy, which is what we do, to a new concept called cosmobiology. And that's where Janov had written a book on the lunar sex cycle of the female. That's the one you're referring to. That where she's born, the location, sets the phase of the moon with the sun, and when she ovulates. And if she moves, that pattern changes. And so her ovulation changes. And then the cosmobiology took it even further and started talking about the storms on Jupiter related to human consciousness. And I did a study of the planet Uranus, which there's no known laws on how Uranus can affect the Earth in any way at all. Yet, Uranus and the Earth and the Sun are in a certain geometric alignment. There was a 3 sigma error coefficient of an event earthquake on a major earthquake on Earth. And when I say 3 sigma, that means 99.99975% probable. And what I did is vet that by going back in history to confirm that that was true. And so the heavens and our planets in a cosmobiology system would not be seen as real, but more as a metaphor of positions of energies that affect human consciousness. And that was cosmobiology, moving from astronomy into the next level. And we don't even have that concept in technology yet.
No, I think that this relationship between consciousness and the physical world is, this is why we're having this talk right now, why I think your work's really important, because you were exploring this back in the 70s, man. And this sort of stuff hasn't really come out into the mainstream except for being, you get
Not
5
yet,
minutes
but it will,
and then
and it will play an important role. You'll say how these kinds of events like the virus, whether it's real or not, look at how it changed the behavior of mankind. The sun right now is emitting radiation that's much hotter than it should be. And that's an interesting concept of what's happening with our sun right now.
Yeah,
the sun affects
and
the Earth way more than people realize.
That's why, getting in, having a look at like that Suspicious Observers YouTube channel is a really great place to look, everybody. If you want to get to know a bit more about the sun, he's very scholarly on the topic of what's going on in the celestial sort of environment there, in our immediate environment. Because, like you're saying, when you think about it, right, like there's enough conversation out there about how the moon, like a full moon, will, the cops put more people on. Yeah, right. But then when you think about it, I mean, I don't know what this is, but I mean, Uranus might be all the way over there, but it's still revolving around the sun. So we're caught in some huge magnetic interplay between all of these celestial bodies.
Well, it may not be magnetic. It might be a force that we have not yet named or measured. Yeah. Or even defined.
Yeah.
That's what cosmobiology was about, was to try to talk about celestial movement and its effects on consciousness. That was Czechoslovakia. They were, wow,
Yeah, right. So
I did the Navy SEALs, both ESP and hypnosis were pseudosciences. Look at how both of them have changed into today's belief systems in terms of the power of hypnosis over pain and the use of extrasensory perception as intuition, thinking with the gut, working with a hierarchy of resonant cavity oscillators. That's what my one doctorate's in resonant cavity oscillators. How subsystems communicate information to the next sub up. Whether you're talking about mycorrhizae in the soil, or you're talking about the gut bacteria and the hierarchy, there's something else going on here that we haven't yet identified or named.
Yeah, and one of the things I really loved once I really started understanding what you were talking about is that the Power Tools book is broken up into 8 sections, and the first section is basically about setting up the physical vehicle, almost like creating the temple worthy of spirit to dwell in. You've got to start with the ground level.
A physical platform from which to launch the rocket.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a holographic concept.
Yeah,
that's where a hologram. You work. A hologram is defined as n dimensions of information in n-1 dimensions. It's the way information folds down into or out of itself. How are we doing for
time? We're doing okay. How are you doing? Are you? I know you're not feeling so great. So
I'm starting to feel, and we can do more of these every week if you want. I'm just running. I've been ill, so I need at some point I'm going to want to crawl into a fetal position and go into alpha.
I tell you what, then, shall we? I tell you what, we'll do a quick wrap up now because I'd love to get you back on again when you're feeling a bit more up for it. I mean,
yeah.
So what I'd like to do is everyone is just to say, look, we've covered some pretty massive ground even in this last 40 odd minutes, and I would thoroughly encourage you to go and check out Rick's new website, richardalanmiller.com. That's ALAN. He's got a Facebook page too that you can check out. And I think yeah, that's okay. And you really want to get this guy's books and buy them direct off him. Why? Because it's just a better idea, because then you're cutting out the middleman, and you can buy a lot of them.
The other part, there's another thing. To ship to New Zealand, it costs more to land a single book than it does the book's cost. That's why I have e-books. However, if you buy 3 books, it lands at a more reasonable rate, because landing 3 books is the same cost as 1, presuming your truck doesn't drive over it and leave tire prints.
Well, to be honest, if you go to the site, you'll probably want to buy a stack of the books, because the array of content's so good. Guys, if you're looking for someone to support and you want to fill your library up with some interesting stuff, now's the time to build your offline library of Alexandria. And man,
I have a brand new one coming up tomorrow. It's workbook 5 on stress management, a holistic approach. Wait till you see that workbook. It's going to go up tomorrow.
Oh, that's exciting. Far out. So we've got a new book coming out, guys. Well, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I always look forward to your new book releases.
Workbook 4 will be going up shortly. Workbook 3 is a mobile water testing laboratory that we have here in Grants Pass. It's run by 3rd graders, teaching 1st graders how to test for potability and drinkability of water. That's workbook 3, and that'll be going up in a couple of weeks. Workbook 5 is stress management, a holistic approach. All illness is a result of mismanagement of stress. And so obviously I'm even guilty.
That's us, all of us, right? Okay. Well, I tell you what, Rick, that's great, man. Like, that's enough for people to watch a couple of times and chew over, take some notes, and go do some exploring. And let's
with you. Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed this. And so what we'll do is that once I get my technology a bit sorted out too, let's try and catch up next week as well, if you've got some time, and we'll go into some other content as well. I'd love to talk about archetypes. I'd love to talk about tarot and Kabbalah, the holistic Kabbalah. You've written some, we're talking about ESP and about body and about agriculture, but then there's this whole topic of like the modern alchemist and, your approach to Jungian, psychology, psychotherapy and dream states and understanding the shadow. And, oh man, it just goes on and on. I can't wait.
That's 3rd generation imaginal psychology. That's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, James Hillman, and several others that I was fortunate to study under. Basically, I took a 14th century Christian mystics concepts of alchemy and translated the old German into English, and then added psychological commentary for the various stages for personal development or personal, enlightenment. The dark night of the soul, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's so good, man. Like, I read it cover to cover, and it was just what the hell happened to me? I felt like something was done to me, so I've got to read it again.
What I'm writing now, I have a new book that'll be out later this year called The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. It's 22 chapters. It's a book on It's a book on tarot. And then I have a 12-volume coming out on pathworking, which is how to change the movie, magic. You know, the sleight of mind. That's what I call it. Legerdemain is sleight of hand. Magic with a K, a sleight of mind.
Oh, that's so cool, man. Like, you know, like I look forward to your books coming out more so than Hollywood movies personally. But anyway, okay, well, we'll leave it there, guys. And Rick, if I could just get you to hold on the line for 2 minutes after I finish the broadcast, I just want to share something with you. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. And we'll get in touch with Rick again soon once we've got a few more of our stars and ducks in alignment. But thank you so much. And I'll see you all again soon. And thank you, Rick.
You bet. My pleasure. We're going to go now. I'm going to go crawl into a ball. You call me next week and we'll do another one.
Sweet. All right. Thanks, guys.
That work for you? Okay. I'm going to close this down then.